Your designer heels click against the pavement as you stroll down the hallway of Southpark High. Heads turned in admiration, others in disdain. You knew the whispers that followed you as the rich girl, the narrative that painted you as shallow and stuck up. It didn't bother you. At least, that's what you told yourself. You adjusted your bag, a limited edition piece that probably cost more than most of your classmates' wardrobes combined. Today was no different from any other day, except for one constant, Kenny McCormick. He leaned casually against the lockers of his trademark orange Pagura, slightly unzipped, revealing a t-shirt underneath. He smirked as you passed, his eyes scanning you from head to toe. Another day, another runway show, he teased loud enough for you to hear. You rolled your eyes. But you didn't really respond. Kenny always had something to say, and you didn't feel like engaging with him today. Kyle was walking beside you with his nose buried in a textbook, sighing. He's only like that because he doesn't know you. Yeah, sure, you replied, trying to mask the slight sting behind his words. Later that afternoon, you found yourself in the library, flipping through pages in a calculus textbook. Kyle had convinced you to study together, and despite your initial reluctance, you found his company surprisingly enjoyable. You're actually really good at this, Kyle remarked as you breezed through another problem. Thanks, you said, a small smile tugging at your lips. People don't usually expect that from me. People like Kenny? Kyle asked with a knowing glance. You laughed softly. Exactly. Unbeknownst to you, Kenny had wandered into the library, looking for Stan when his eyes landed on you and Kyle, deep in conversation. Something about the scene made him pause. He couldn't explain it, but the laughter you shared with Kyle felt different from the image he had of you. The next day, you walked into the cafeteria, tray in hand, scanning for a place to sit. Spotting Kyle and Stan, you made your way over to them, only to find Kenny sitting with them. Hey, Wan, Stan greeted you. You sat down, ignoring Kenny's skeptical glance. Hey guys. Kenny leaned back in his chair, twirling a fry between his fingers. Surprised you're slumming it over here with us peasants. You raised an eyebrow. Maybe I just like the company. Kyle stifled a laugh, and Kenny looked over, momentarily taken aback before recovering. Guess we should feel honored. Over the next few weeks, your paths crossed more often than usual. Whether it was through Kyle, random encounters in the hall, or group projects, Kenny started seeing more of the real you. The quick wit, the intelligence, the kindness hidden behind your polished exterior. One afternoon, you prepared with Kenny for a class assignment. Great, he muttered under his breath. Oh, relax, you said, rolling your eyes. I'm not exactly thrilled either. As the two of you worked together, the tension gradually eased. You couldn't deny Kenny's charm, even if it annoyed you. He was funny, sharp, and surprisingly thoughtful when he let his guard down. You're not as bad as I thought, he admitted at one point, scribbling notes. Neither are you replied, surprising yourself. One chilly evening, the group decided to hang out at Stark's Pond. The air was nice and crisp, and the stars twinkled above as the fire crackled nearby. You sat yourself on the ground, watching the flames dance when Kenny approached you, hands stuffed into his pockets. Mind if I join you? He asked. You shrugged. Suit yourself. For a moment, the two of you sat in silence, the sound of laughter and chattering in the background fading. You know, I used to think you were just some spoiled princess, Kenny admitted. And now? You asked, glancing at him. He smiled softly. Now, I think that there's a little bit more to you than that. You felt your cheeks warm up. For once, you didn't have a snarky comeback. What about you? You asked. Why are you always so defensive around me? Kenny hesitated before answering. I guess I just figured someone like you wouldn't get it. You got everything. I mean, the Money, clothes, perfect life. It's hard not to feel, I don't know, bitter about it. He nodded slowly, understanding more than he realized. Just because I have perfect things doesn't mean my life's perfect. Everybody deals with something. He looked at you, really looked at you for the first time. You felt like he saw you. Not the clothes, not the persona, but you. The shift between the two of you was subtle at first, but a shared smile here, a playful jab there. Slowly but surely, the animosity melted away, replaced by something neither you could quite name. One day you walked out of school, Kenny cutting up to you. "Hey," he said, slightly out of breath. "Oh, hi," you replied, a smile tugging at your lips. "So, I was thinking," he began, scratching the back of his neck. "Maybe we could hang out. I don't know, just us." You raised an eyebrow, amused. "Are you asking me out on a date, Kenny?" "Maybe," he replied, with a smirk. "Depends on your answer." You pretended to think for a moment before grinning. "Fine, but only if you promise not to make fun of my shoes." "No promises," he teased, but his grin was genuine. As the two of you walked away, you couldn't help but feel maybe, just maybe, this enemies to lovers thing wasn't so bad after all. The invitation came out of nowhere. One moment you were sitting at home, flipping through a magazine, and next, your phone buzzed with a message from Kyle. "Kyle, hey, we're doing something later. You in?" You stared at the screen, trying to decode the cryptic message. Knowing Kyle, that could mean anything. Still, the prospect of breaking the boringness of your afternoon was tempting. "What kind of something?" you texted. Kyle replied, "It's dumb. You'll hate it." "Great sales pitch," you texted back. Kyle sent one last message. "Just meet us at Stark's Pond at 4. Against your better judgment, you agreed. When you arrived at the pond, the familiar group was already there. Kyle waved, Stan gave you a nod, and Cartman looked annoyed as usual. That wasn't really a change. Kenny, leaning casually against a tree, smirked the moment he saw you. "Look who decided to grace us with their presence," he said, his voice dripping with playful sarcasm. "You sure those designer boots can handle the great outdoors?" You rolled your eyes, but you couldn't stop the smile that tugged at your lips. "I'll manage, thanks for the concern." "We'll see," Kenny shot back, his grin widening. Kyle cleared his throat. "Okay, can we focus? We need to figure out how to get this thing up here." He followed his gaze to a large, crudely constructed ramp pointing towards a tree. At the top of the tree, there was a precariously placed mannequin wearing a wig and a tutu. "What is that?" you asked, pointing. Stan shrugged. Cartman lost a bet, and now he has to retrieve Princess Wiggles." Cartman groaned. "Ugh, this is all so stupid. I didn't even lose the bet. You all cheated." "You didn't cheat," Kyle exasperated. "You just suck at poker." While they bickered, Kenny sat it up next to you. "So, what do you think? Up for the chaos?" "Depends," you replied, crossing your arms. "How chaotic are we talking?" Kenny leaned closer, his voice dropping just enough to make your heart skip. "Stick around and find out." The next hour was a whirlwind of increasingly ridiculous attempts to get the mannequin down. First, they tried using a long stick, which snapped under the weight. Then Cartman suggested throwing rocks, which nearly resulted in a broken window. Through all of it, Kenny's teasing never let up. "You could always climb up there," he said, at one point gesturing to the tree. You raised an eyebrow. "Me? In these boots?" "What's the matter?" he teased, afraid of getting a little dirt on them. You glared at him. Through the corners of your mouth betrayed your smile. "What? Why don't you climb, hero?" "Because," he replied, with a wink, "I'd rather stand here and instruct you." Kyle groaned. "Can you two focus? We're never going to get anything done if you keep flirting." "We're not flirting," you and Kenny said at the same time, in unison. No, your cheeks burned. Oh, you're totally fretting, Stan said, shaking his head. Even the group eventually managed to knock down the mannequin with a combination of teamwork and pure luck. As it hit the ground with a sickening thud, Cartman threw up his hands. Finally, can we go home now? This is stupid and I hate you all. Sure, Kyle said, rolling his eyes. Go ahead and leave, Cartman. Cartman stomped off, muttering curses under his breath. Guess that's our cue to call it a night, Stan said. Kyle nodded, turning to you. Thanks for coming, Wyan, even if that was really dumb. You smiled. It wasn't that bad. Kenny walked beside you as the group dispersed. Admit it, he said. You had fun. Maybe, you replied, glancing at him. Maybe a little bit. See, told you chaos was worth it, he replied. The next morning, you arrived at the bus stop feeling unusually tired, despite the ridiculous of the previous day. You couldn't stop replaying a certain moment. Specifically, the way Kenny had teased you and the way his voice had softened when he looked at you. As you stood there adjusting your bag, Kenny walked up. He was dressed as usual, but the mischievous glint in his eyes was unmistakable. Morning, princess, he said. His tone was light. Morning, you replied, trying not to smile. For a moment, the two of you just stood in silence, watching as the other kids gathered around. Then out of nowhere, you felt his hand brush against yours. You glanced at him, startled, when he was looking straight ahead. His expression was calm, slow, tentatively. You slid your hand into his. His fingers crossed around yours, warm and steady. Didn't think you'd actually do it, he said softly, his voice just for you. Do what? You asked, your heart racing. Hold my hand, he replied. You sparked, trying to mask how flustered you felt. Maybe I just like the company. He laughed quietly, his thumb brushing against the back of your hand. Guess I should feel honored. As the bus pulled up, the doors creaked open. Neither of you made a move to let go. For the first time in a long time, you felt like you didn't need to pretend. As the bus doors closed behind you, you and Kenny found a seat near the back, still holding hands. The familiar hum of the engine seemed to fade into the darkness as the both of you settled in easy silence. You could feel the warmth radiating from his hands, and you didn't really mind the weird looks from the kids, because you got them anyway. You know, Kenny started, his voice quieter now. I never thought I'd actually see the day where you held my hand. You turned to him with a playful smirk tugging at your lips. What? You thought I was too good for you? He shrugged, a half grin, tugging at his mouth. Maybe. His tone was teasing, but there was something softer behind it, something you couldn't quite place. Well, you're wrong, you said back, nudging him with your shoulder. I'm not exactly used to hanging out with people like you. His eyes sparkled with amusement. People like me. What's that supposed to mean? You glanced out the window, avoiding his gaze for a moment, unsure of how to respond. You'd never really thought about it before. But there was something about Kenny that you hadn't expected. He was reckless, sure, but there was something else deep beneath the surface that intrigued you. I don't know, you said softly. I thought you were a little too much, with the jokes and the attitude, and I didn't think we had much in common. Yeah? Kenny said, his tone drooping. And now? You turned back to him, meeting his gaze. His eyes weren't as cocky as they were as usual. There was a vulnerability there, one that you hadn't seen before, one that made you feel like maybe he was just unsure. Despite all the teasing and confidence. Now, you said with a small smile, now I think you're not really as bad as I thought. Kenny's grin widened, though there was a softness to it. Guess you finally figured me out. I guess so, you replied. But don't get used to it. I'm still the best dressed in this whole town. Kenny chuckled. Oh, I know. You wouldn't let anyone forget it. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the bus and the steady beat of your heart. You hadn't expected any of this. Kenny, the jokes, the teasing, the weird, unexpected connection that was starting to form between you. But this strange moment, you felt something new beginning. The bus made a sharp turn, Kenny's hand tightening around yours. "So," he said, leaning in. "What now?" You looked at him, your grip on his hand loosening a little. Maybe we just figure this out together." "Yeah, I can get behind that," he replied. And for the first time in a while, you didn't need to pretend to have it all figured out. You would just figure it out together.